BOE capital adjustments. Rearranged projects. The Board of Ed's 5-year request is $266 million, almost $267 million, and the first Selectmen's request is $222 million. But I want to point out, it's just a rearrangement there. We support all of the projects. We've pushed them out a year. You only do one project at a time. Right now it's Central. Old Greenwich would be next, but these are all worthwhile projects that have to be done. But we just rearranged them, so those numbers there, nothing was cut. Central Middle School. The current estimated project cost for Central Middle School will be an important discussion topic between the BOE and the BET throughout the budget process with the goal of appropriating funds for a brand new Central Middle School. Fiscal year 23 is $2.5 million. The BOE submitted $85.5 million. The BET guidelines were $67.5 million. We are putting in $75.2 million. And it's not just splitting the difference. Having studied what's happened in the past there, we know the short-term enrollments are slated to go down, but that's in the near term. I remember when Coscop School was going to be closed in the 1980s, and there was similar trends, and people were saying to close it, close it, close it. Well, when they finally rebuilt it, it came back with a vengeance, and it's the kids were coming there, and it's full. So you always have to be careful of that. So you want to give a little bit of a cushion, but I thought the 85 to 90 million was a little bit high. So we want to give a little bit of a cushion, but we also want to make sure that we keep our eye on the ball there and get a brand new state-of-the-art school there, but exactly what's needed, and maybe just a little bit more of a cushion. But we think that will work there at 75.2. OG. So I had the opportunity and the pleasure to go there the other day, and I want to thank the principal and the staff and the building committee there. They're doing a great job. That building was built in 1902. So typically with buildings like that, they present a challenge because you really want to keep a beautiful facade like that, and the structure is great. People love it. But what happens is it's been a couple of renovations, so when you're going, some parts of it, there's high ceilings, other parts are low ceilings, and sometimes they're dipping down stairs and going back up. So the challenge there is to keep that beautiful school, but to bring it up to code. And I think they got a handle on it, and it's a great project. It's the first thing that's going to be done on that is if you're looking at that straight on there, what hits you right away? There's no ADA compliance or inclusion there, so that's got to be done right away. So excited about that one, and we'll get that done. But that was just pushed out to fiscal year 25 because, again, we can only do one at a time. JC, everything that was asked for there is going to be funded. So thank you. So Western Middle School soil remediation. So many of you were at the middle school on January 11th. The representatives from the EPA, from the federal government was there, and from the state, DEEP. What's great is now we're actually getting close to this now. So I added $10 million for fiscal year 24 to get this done. These kids have been without a playing field for 6 years. That means whole classes went through their 3 years there, having to be bussed around the town, never being able to play on their home field. And as somebody who spent a lot of time on those fields there, if you look at them, they clearly not only can fill a void for the school, but with not the baseball field, but the multi-purpose field, it would make a beautiful sports complex. Really, and you could actually even put some lights there. You're not really bothering anybody. The bakery's there, the school's there, the dump's there. But that would really alleviate a lot of the stress and the demand for all fields. The baseball field way in the back is the most contaminated part of it, but that would also be remediated. So that is critical that we get those kids back out on the field, and also help the rest of the town by adding more playing surfaces.
The total request for capital that the Board of Ed submitted to the town was $121 million. 90% of that is 2 projects: Central Middle School replacement, Old Greenwich major renovation. All the rest of the entire capital program is the remaining 10%. So really, there was a lot of conversation about shifting maintenance so we could focus on executing our current projects that we have right now, as well as working together to make room to fund the major renovations that we all know that we need. So you'll see that the board really had a lot of extensive conversations on listening to prioritizing so that we can work to try to get some of these projects to a point where we can get them funded and get the community what they need. Here we just show that basically since the original master plan that the board had done, that's about 6 years old, versus what is in our submission today, has been reduced by nearly 50%. You know, the longer that some of these projects have been delayed, the higher the cost keeps getting, and really the less value that the district is going to get for those projects because the scope keeps getting smaller and smaller. So that just kind of shows how over the last few years these projects' scope have changed to really prioritize on the maintenance. Old Greenwich was included in the fiscal year 24 request for the Board of Ed. This was at $24.5 million. This project avoids, basically we remove $6.8 million in maintenance at the facility if we fund the major renovation. There's a real need. It was, as First Selectman Camillo mentioned, 1902 it was built. It's not ADA compliant. This is a constant issue at this school, literally having to move kids in their entire classrooms to the first floor, move people around in the middle of the year. It's really a challenge. It is an iconic structure of the OG community. The scope from the KDG master plan that the Board of Ed did has been reduced to really prioritize the core needs of the facility. There is a building committee. They're up and running. They confirmed to the board when we were submitting that they are on time to us for their fiscal year 24 appropriation.
Good evening. I do want to let you know that we provided a packet as well of quotes and letters from our students at Old Greenwich School. My name is Jen Bensavengo, and I am a 25-year veteran educator in the Greenwich Public Schools and the proud principal of Old Greenwich School. This is the 5th time in as many years I've stood before you requesting funding for all of our schools' much-needed renovation and expansion projects. As a teacher, I feel compelled to give a brief history lesson. January 26, 1992 was a turning point date in our history for millions of U.S. citizens with disabilities. In 1992, I was 17 years old, and compliance of Title II of the American Disabilities Act went into effect, requiring state and local governments to give people with disabilities an equal opportunity to benefit from all of their programs, services, and activities. In 48 hours, it'll be the 31st anniversary of this compliance date, and yet our schools are still woefully out of compliance. We currently have a student at Old Greenwich who was injured skiing this December. He has not been able to access his classroom on the 3rd floor with his friends. His cast prohibits him from climbing the 77 steps from the ground floor to his classroom each day, leaving him limited to a wheelchair on the ground floor of the school with a substitute teacher. Other students with permanent physical limitations have to be turned away at times, and often we have to offer options of more accessible schools in Greenwich to attend. In 2023, as an educator and a mother, it is unconscionable to think a child with a physical limitation 33 years after ADA was passed is not able to attend their neighborhood school. Shameful. Our students have asked when we're going to have a renovation, when our friend will come back to the classroom, when we can stop wearing coats in the middle of winter in class and close our windows again, because that's our only ventilation option at Old Greenwich. And we consider adequate ventilation a necessity, not a nice to have. But I'm not going to wax poetic tonight about our basic requests of an accessible, adequately ventilated, safe, sewage-free school. I'm going to ask you to please continue the commitment you made to support the next steps in our renovation. Please adequately fund Old Greenwich in fiscal year 24 and ensure that we are able to continue on the architectural engineer and design process that we have begun. Our incredible building committee has worked tirelessly to make this happen and to meet some timelines for this group. And we're trusting the students, the taxpayers, and the parents behind me are trusting that you are going to commit to making a difference for our people. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the BET. My name is James Waters. I'm a member of RTM District 12 and the Budget Overview Committee and the Finance Committee. Tonight, I speak as chairman of the Old Greenwich School Building Committee. We've been hard at work since October. In the past 15 weeks, we've met 19 times and have made significant progress in making the OGS renovation actionable. We owe tremendous thanks to our team of volunteers who made this happen. We thank GPS's purchasing department for adjudicating our questions and guiding us. They're a great asset to the town, and we appreciate their hard work and expertise. We'd also like to thank the town legal department, town clerk's office for keeping us on track and by the book. And I will personally thank again Stephen Walco, Tony Turner, Leslie Moriarty, Mike Mason, and many others for their input. This has been a team effort, and we're lucky to have great public servants dedicated to the OGS project in our town. The Board of Ed approved the OGS Ed Specs in October 2021. As a reminder, key points to address: bringing the school into compliance with the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act, including the installation of an elevator, creating a single secure entryway for visitor management, managing stormwater to prevent further flooding and sewage seeping into classrooms, adding a building-wide sprinkler system to adhere to the fire code, addressing health issues with the building-wide HVAC system, ensuring new classrooms address a strong, sustained enrollment at OGS and 21st century learning environment. All of these are must-haves, things we should expect in every school in Greenwich. To begin to make this a reality, we've rolled up our sleeves to understand the ed specs and what they call for and what they don't call for. We've put together, solicited, and analyzed proposals from architects and owners' reps, interviewed candidates, analyzed compared costs, begun the process of interfacing with stakeholders and members of the community. We've briefed various RTM committees and the Board of Ed on our progress along the way. And last week, the Board of Ed unanimously endorsed our unanimously recommended architect, Silver Petroselli and Associates. We'll be prepared to speak to the BET and this budget committee during budget deliberations. And as we go about hiring our professional team to include architect, owner's rep, and other consultants, at the forefront is staying on time and on budget. We're confident we're in a position to move forward on this project in the coming fiscal year if funds are included in the 2023-2024 budget as recommended by the Board of Ed. You'll recall that $24.5 million has been estimated for the OGS renovation, in addition to the $1 million approved by this board last year. In the coming weeks, we're taking a deep dive on project costs to refine the estimate and ensure it's consistent with the scope and current construction costs. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to our upcoming conversations.
Hi, everybody. Most of the board knows me, but for others, I'm Molly Salibi, RTM District 8 Public Works Committee, and now a proud member of the fabulous Old Greenwich School Building Committee. We're working very hard to advance this critical renovation addition project. I believe your chair has received our first quarterly report, and I hope that you've all had a chance to look at it. And I ask those on this board who haven't recently been at the school to please schedule a walkthrough as soon as possible. I heard stated tonight that we only do one school project at a time. Really? That's no policy. This BET board has the authority to instate projects and funding to move items. And with that, I came here tonight to ask that along with Central Middle School, you fund Old Greenwich School without delay. Students shouldn't wait an entire additional year, little children, because we now have Central too. I wrote a lengthy letter to the editor last year in support of a new Central Middle School, which I think most of you will recall, and I want both of these endeavors to move forward now. We have a hefty schools capital plan. There will always be competing projects. We need to stop trading one for the other and delaying. As I've said publicly in the past, it seems not that we can't spend adequate necessary funds, it's that we won't. We have the money, and if some of you don't appreciate comments about the board being stingy, as some people feel, or references to our crumbling schools, then please show us with your financial commitment. Yes, some of the buildings are in good shape, more are not, and it's a problem, and we need to address what we haven't done, not talk about what has been. When I was recently at Coscob School for my RTM meeting, riding on the elevator, I thought about the children at Old Greenwich School without an elevator in a building with 6 floor levels, and that recently there were 4 Old Greenwich students on crutches simultaneously. It's depressing, frankly. And now it's personal to me because we meet at Old Greenwich School and we see the children. And I'm also providing reading support to 2 precious young students right after our weekly building committee meetings, and I care about them. Some things bear repeating. An elementary school decades out of ADA compliance with no elevator, no accessible front nor gym auditorium entrance, without a sprinkler system in the majority of the building to meet current fire code, with raw sewage having breached kindergarten classrooms, poor air quality, scarcity of space. These are urgent problems to have already been rectified, not nice to haves. The most important role of this finance board is to determine how to fund with an emphasis on how. I want to continue to have faith in this board as a whole and hope that our words have influence and impact on you, and that these public hearings matter. I've often wondered if they do. Please show us that's the case. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the time to speak. My name is Craig Barandowski. I live on Grant Avenue in Old Greenwich. I'm a father of 3 young boys, 2 of which are in the elementary school now, and we have 1 following shortly behind. I think one of the things COVID taught us through it all is the importance of classroom learning and kids being in the classroom with their peers. You know, it's important to their academic and social development, and I think the social development is a really key part to a child's development. You know, children are an essential component of our community. You know, I come from public school system myself, and a family of educators. My mother was a teacher of 40 years. My sister's been teaching for a little over 20. Our school district was similarly very large, so I understand the complexity of managing this infrastructure, the network of schools, and each one and what they require. The one thing I don't understand, though, is how OGS has stayed non-ADA compliant for over 30 years. I was in elementary school when it was enacted, and we added an elevator the very next year. So unfortunately, my 9-year-old broke his leg a few weeks ago, and this became very real to him. 3 decades of neglect was a personal thing for him now. So as you can imagine, so he loves school so much, and he's excited every day to go to school. He's an active participant, very enthusiastic, maybe sometimes a little too enthusiastic, his teachers tell me, shouting instead of raising his hand. But you can imagine his crushing defeat when he realized he might not be able to attend school since his classroom's on the 3rd floor and there is no elevator. It was one of the first things he asked my wife and I, with tears streaming down his face. What am I going to do? How can I go to school? I can't go up and down the stairs in crutches. What if someone bumps me and I fall down the stairs? Dad, there's just so many stairs. So suddenly his joy for school became fear of school. His excitement was replaced by anxiety. His camaraderie was replaced by isolation. But through the miracle of incredible compassion and ingenuity from Principal Pensavengo and the vice principal and his teachers, they were able to make some lemonade out of a bushel basket of lemons. It has been disruptive to the teachers and the classmates, but they've come up with a temporary solution to a multi-decade problem. But bailing water out of a boat is not the same as fixing the boat. I find myself now asking questions, what if there was other kids that broke their leg? What if it was a teacher? The conclusion is simple. Relying on reaction is not a long-term solution, and inaction has been a long-term failure. We are failing our young children, who are a cornerstone of our community. It is time for us to be leaders and start addressing the needs of our children and faculty. My friends with older children have told me, cherish your time, because if you blink, you might miss it. Let's not blink and stay ADA non-compliant for another 30 years. Thank you.
It's on. Good evening. My name is Mary Tobin. I live in Old Greenwich. I am on the RTM for District 6, but I'm speaking for myself this evening. I would like to speak in support of full funding for the renovation of Old Greenwich School. 3.5 years ago, my family moved to my husband's hometown for the great community of people who live here, for the parks and natural beauty, and especially for the excellent public schools. My son Dylan is now a second grader at OGS, and we have been so appreciative of the excellent teaching staff, administration, and the special education support team. Last year, I spoke to you all about my son's first grade classroom. The bathroom floods with raw sewage every time there is a big storm. I said then that I believe we can do better, and we have. Thanks to the funding support of the BET and RTM and the hard work of the OGS Building Committee, we have made real progress. Ed specs have been drafted, and an architectural firm has been selected and approved with unanimous support of the Board of Education. As a town, we have taken these tangible steps forward and must continue on this path. Our classrooms need to be brought up to date with proper ventilation and adequate spaces for all children to learn, whatever their needs. My son is receiving excellent support services for the special ed staff, some of whom who have to work with children out of a broom closet. We can do better. And with the horror in Uvalde in the all too near past, it is deeply unsettling for me knowing that my child's school does not yet have a secure entrance. We must continue to prioritize investing in the health, safety, and quality of learning for our children. Their health and safety cannot wait another year. I believe in the many people in our town who volunteer their time and talent, many of whom are in this room tonight, coming together to find solutions to these challenges. We must support their efforts by investing in the infrastructure required so that we can bring the spaces where our children learn up to date, up to code, and up to the standards that we have all come to expect and appreciate in our wonderful town. I want to thank you for your service to Greenwich and for your consideration of this matter. Thank you.
So my wife and I live just blocks from OGS, and we have a daughter who graduated last year, and we have a first grader who's currently in the school. And OGS is certainly a cornerstone of the community. It has strong and growing enrollment, and it needs your support. I wanted to discuss this evening some of the values that are inherent in the request. You've heard a lot of details behind them, but to posture it this way, number one is the inclusivity of the request. Certainly you've heard a lot about how we're in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, anti-discrimination, civil rights legislation, that we certainly teach our kids about the need for fairness and opportunity, and yet the school that they attend is in violation of the ADA. We need to remedy that as soon as possible. We certainly make a commitment as a community to our kids' health and welfare, yet we're dealing with a school that has inadequate ventilation. I'm father of the first grader who has asthma, and certainly is an issue that we take very personally. It certainly needs a corrective HVAC system, and certainly the flooding situation, knowing a little bit about working in a security field and the need for resilience. I mean, you're looking at a situation that sewage flooding can come in, and the only mitigation for it is a single choke point of a manual labor who might be available when the incident happens. That is a recipe for not only failure of the plan, but also for additional spending for whenever that plan. So I think it was Brian Jacoby who talked about the wisdom of financial planning and investing ahead so that you don't have later greater waste of funds. And then lastly, our pledge to provide safety and security for our students. I do want to comment that we have noted the additional patrols following Uvalde, and those are greatly appreciated by all the parents. They give us great comfort. We have several needs like the sprinkler system. We have the needs for the secure access to the school. We have a need to improve the school to bring it up to par with what we pledge to our students to support them every day. So I lastly just want to conclude with the timeliness of our request. The need is urgent, obviously. Allocated funding will not sit idle, which is the pox of any kind of budgeting process, and we greatly need your support. So thank you very much.
Good evening, BET members. My name is Brian Jacoby, and I'm a proud father of 3 kids who attend Greenwich Public Schools. My wife Erica and I are both products of and advocates of healthy public school systems. We moved to Old Greenwich from New York 7 years ago for this great community, but more importantly for the public schools. On a rainy day in Old Greenwich School, you might find sewage overflowing in the lower level classrooms. On my most recent parent-teacher visit, Principal B was apologizing to new parents for the stench that reminded us of New York City gutters on 100-degree days. You will find a non-compliant entryway that's been talked about that is unsettling during an era of school shootings or for the disabled. And finally, the pandemic only highlighted our need for a baseline ventilation system. In short, the building is dilapidated and excessively depreciated. I have a financial background taught me about people and organizations. The best leaders tend to wear bifocals. They keep one eye on the near term, but they never lose sight of the long term. Conversely, the worst management teams and leaders, which were the ripest for turnarounds, allocate capital reactively and not proactively. These organizations lack milestones, transparency, and accountability, a classic formula for wealth destruction. For OGS's front door, does the town need to see more complaints to the civil rights team? Do we need a roof to fall down like a sister school to get funding for a facility? Do we need to wait until a first grader gets sick from a potential exposure to bacteria to address flooding issues? Look, the short-term outlook is confusing. It's an original time. There's no playbook for a post-pandemic period. There's headwinds all over the place, hyperinflation, inflation and overheads, the never-ending chorus of demands for capital like this one. But no environment is perfect. When money was loose and growth rampant, we asked when the good times are going to end. From Old Greenwich School's eyes, the BET didn't spend the maintenance capital when money was basically free. And now we're told that the pool of capital is limited and won't support maintenance in 2023. While we all love a low mill rate, we can't expect to uphold our quality of life or real estate values when core education infrastructure is falling apart. Just in the last 2 years, the committee did approve funding for ed specs and architecture. And if this funding was committed or even soft circled, did we line up a financing commitment? Are we just trying to kick the can down the road with this 2024 rhetoric? Hopefully not. Look, whether you live north or south of 95, we all want high property values. Otherwise, your financially mobile neighbors might actually flee. Connecticut doesn't have a 0% income tax rate anymore, like it did in the 90s.
30 seconds.
Okay. However, there is a reason that Fairfield County still enjoys the highest population growth in a shrinking state in the recent decade, and that's not taxes, it's best-in-class schools and great communities to raise families. So let's work together to ensure our communities get base needs, not wants, and the value of our homes hold up, because the next buyer of your home is going to care about that school. With remote working, the risk is real that those buyers are going to be seduced by state-of-the-art schools in other towns like Darien or Westport. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for being here, listening to everybody. I'm here. My name's Michael Partridge. I'm from Riverside, but I'm married to a teacher at Old Greenwich, and who grew up in Old Greenwich, went to school at Old Greenwich, and now my daughter's in 5th grade at Old Greenwich. Vivian hurt herself, hurt her knee, and this subject of ADA compliance became very personal to us when she went to school after on crutches and could not get up and down the stairs to her classroom. Fortunately, mom's a teacher downstairs, so she would stay downstairs, wait until somebody could call, get help to get her up and down the stairs. 3 or 4 times a day, going up and down the stairs did not work out well for her. But now she's better and back at it, so that's good. But the compliance issue is a real issue. It needs to be addressed. Everybody else has said this. I don't need to repeat it, much more. And also the sewage. My teachers, my wife's being on the first floor, has experienced this firsthand in her classroom. And anyway, we shouldn't have to have this in Greenwich. We can do better for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Matthew Kane, I'm the treasurer of the CMS PTA. I'm speaking in that capacity. I'm also here as a 8-year Greenwich resident, father of 3, one 7th grader at CMS, one 5th grader at North Street, and a 2nd grader that perhaps at North Street who will perhaps see a new building for CMS, hopefully. Mindful of Madam Chairwoman's reminder not to repeat comments, I will say that I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be here, and wildly impressed by the comments made by my fellow Greenwich citizens. I thought Bob Cheney, Francis Wu Nobe, and Brian Jacoby, frankly, all said it better than I can. So I will cut back very much on what I intended to say, other than just reflect that something the first selectman said about kicking the can down the road seems very appropriate here. It is undeniable, hearing all of the needs from schools, buildings in this town, that we have a major problem, that whether it's the actions of this board or another board, a Republican or a Democrat, simply doesn't matter. The time is now to fix these issues. We have a building that is falling down. We have buildings that are not ADA compliant. We have raw sewage flowing to first floor classrooms. These are unacceptable. They're unacceptable in any town. They're unacceptable in this town. So I urge you all to please support the infrastructure initiatives, and vis-a-vis CMS in particular. We all know that spreading false information about expanding ed specs, about a $67 million number that was not spec'd through construction bidding, was always intended to be a placeholder, serves nothing but delay. There is no more time for delay. I urge you to support the number proposed by the Board of Ed. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Cheney, and I'm speaking this evening not only as a concerned parent of a current student and future student at Central Middle School, but as a board member of PTAC, where I oversee facilities. This evening, I want to urge the BET to fully fund the capital budget request for Central Middle School, the Western Middle School field remediation, the Greenwich High School vestibule security project, and the Old Greenwich building rehabilitation. Before I speak about those items, let me briefly speak about Riverside. This is yet another school that is not ADA compliant. There is no elevator, among other issues. It also has major capacity issues and has the lowest square footage per K-5 student in the district. There are also faculty members who have no classroom space to teach their classes in the media, and they teach their classes in the media center. Riverside has been pushed aside for far too long, and that needs to stop. The BET needs to approve the $150,000 Riverside School building study in the BOE's capital budget. The budget also needs to be approved for the remediation of the toxic fields at Western Middle School. The Western Middle School fields have been shut down for 6 years now and are not accessible to the students or the community. We need to fix this. That the community came out and forced to support this project at the state hearing on January 11th shows that the remediation of the fields is what the community wants and should therefore be approved. The BET also needs to approve the Greenwich High School vestibule security project as well as the Old Greenwich building rehabilitation project. I'm told, by the way, that the building committee for OG is running very smoothly, and I wanted to thank the BOE for approving the Old Greenwich architect. All of these projects are urgently needed and deserve to be fully funded this year. The last project that needs approval is Central Middle School. There has been a lot of misinformation floating around regarding the Central Middle School project. It seems that there are members of the BET that want to shrink the size of the CMS building and are using misinformation to further this goal. This is not acceptable and, frankly, embarrassing to have misinformation spread under the guise of authority. There was mention of a steep cost escalation. There has been no cost escalation. There's talk about current student numbers being low. The number of students does not matter. The number of classrooms is actually the key consideration. And the plan is for the new building to have 30 classrooms. The classrooms at the current building are only 600 square feet, much smaller than present-day classroom design. The average number of students per classroom at CMS is currently 24, which means the rooms in the new school need to be at least 800 square feet. Look, Central Middle School was built in the 1950s. They didn't allocate for special ed space or a large media center. As I just mentioned, they also did not take into account the larger classroom sizes. We're in the beginning phases with Central Middle School. No one really knows what the final design will call for. What is known is that the community needs everyone on the Central Middle School Building Committee working together to deliver the best new middle school for our students. I urge the BET to fully fund the capital budget request for Central Middle School and stop playing politics with our children's future. We, as a town, are better than this. Thank you, and have a good night.
Hi there, I'm Lucy Von Brockel. I live in Byram. I'm on the RTM, but I'm speaking for myself tonight. I've been coming to these meetings for a number of years, as you guys know, and I am struck every year by how much passion there is in these comments, and later how little is actually heard from these comments. So tonight I would like to make a couple of points. One is that we're 5 years into a public school master facilities plan and have barely anything to show for it. So to hear tonight that Old Greenwich School might be pushed off another year because we can't do multiple projects at the same time is heartbreaking and a little infuriating, particularly when, tonight we've talked about reducing subsidies for the elderly in our community. We've talked about the funds for our schools, and we're also talking about projects like parks and skating rinks, which are very important, and I honestly 100% support, but if we can't do the important stuff, we shouldn't do the nice-to-haves at the moment. And the important stuff are our schools, our elderly, the vulnerable people in our community, and we really need to move forward with all of those. Thank you.